Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is the one and only Danny Guerinoni, otherwise known as Danny G. Danny is, well, firstly, an old friend and also a fellow sales professional, very passionate about what he does, and an all-round great bloke who's very inspiring to be around, and I always love when we catch up. So it's been a while, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. Here is what he's been up to. Find a bit more about his journey since we last caught up, and no doubt for him to share some wisdom. So, Danny, with that introduction, mate, welcome to the show. How are you getting on?
Joe, thank you. I've been really really well, and thanks for the kind words as usual. I've been great. I've been living the dream, trying to motivate myself, trying to push myself, and ultimately, sharing connections, trying to build my network, and hopefully tackle on the challenges about this crazy world we're living in. All these, constant change, these interesting moments that are keeping us on our toes. That's for sure.
Cool. And mate, I was thinking about it, it's probably been a couple of years since we probably last caught up. What's been going on in the world of Danny G in the last couple of years?
Oh, the life of Danny G. It's always interesting. Well, let's just say my career has been a bit of a wild ride,
Okay.
in terms of unexpected detours, some twists and turns. And I believe when we last spoke, I was a partner relations advisor. So that was where I honed my skills in building relationships with its esteemed partners, for as I say. And I was like you would like to call the smooth talking diplomat, lodging the gap between our company and theirs. So, but then life had other plans for me. So I was there for 2-3 years, developing those skills and those attributes. And I found myself catapulted into the world of account management. And basically, it was like waking up in a different planet, wearing a spacesuit made of spreadsheets and contracts. Suddenly, I had to juggle multiple accounts like a professional circus performer balancing like a flaming bowling pin. And in the end, I think I found my new calling as an account manager, where I get to forge deep connections with clients, tame the wildest of account demands. It's been a thrilling journey, and I can't wait to see where the next loop or hurdle takes me, that's for sure.
Love it. Mate, so you mentioned it's been a bit of an unexpected twist from you to go from the partner role to the account manager role. How did that come about?
Well, at Symbio, and I'll talk a bit more about my company later on. I started from I would say, the very bottom of sales, where I was doing relentless cold calling, where I was, going in day to day. I was taking in maybe 40, 50 calls a day, and then sometimes I was, making outbound calls, just depending on how busy it was. And I couldn't, at the time, I would say, very, very hungry and very more and more keen to develop those sort of phone skills, people skills, and that really was unexpected because I always wanted to. My passion has always been sport, and in particular football, and I always pictured myself being a commentator or being a coach or being some sort of writer doing blogs or vlogs, and that was always a dream of mine because I always wanted to be involved in sport and that aspect of it. However, when I was at uni and when I graduated from those roles, I believe I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I made a realization that I was mixing business with too much pleasure, and there's that fine line that you don't necessarily want to be working to a complete passion every single day. Because when I'm in sales now, sometimes I like to wind down and I'll come back home just to relax and I'll be watching football highlights. But if I'm watching football highlights, for example, at work every single day to day, I feel like a lot of the sting and a lot of the excitement would be taken out of it, a bit like VAR, but we won't get into that. So no, it was always that change that was always scary for me, and I know that my parents were always telling me, we want you to, be happy and, continue with what you want to do, and we'll always support you. So I had that good backing from them, and it wasn't, oh, you're not using, sometimes I get messages or I get just comments saying, oh, you never used your full degree in your current role, and then I said, yeah, correct, I didn't. You always got to own up to it, and you always got to be sure of that. But at the end of the day, I definitely learned some skills from that degree, and I got to know an amazing amount of people through it all, and I am where I am right now, and I don't regret it.
I think just on that last thing you said about the degree, you work in sales. There isn't, you actually can't study sales. There isn't a degree for sales. So everyone who works in sales, if they have a degree, has majority of the time, unless it's maybe psychology, I think, but majority have a degree, then it isn't actually relevant to their current profession, including myself.
Well, that's an absolutely great point. And to be honest, I'd also argue that sales, it should be some sort of a degree, because I do believe sales is such an important part of your life, whether you're using it literally or metaphorically. Even in the dating world right now, if you're ever using dating apps, you kind of have to sell yourself to the lady, or to that to that potential prospect. You gotta really make sure that you're providing that sort of confidence, and you're using yourself as a product. For example, you want to, it's hard to become attractive if you don't sell how good or how amazing of a potential that you've got.
100%. I always say this, but like, it's life is sales. Whatever you're doing, you don't even say you're trying to even just convince your mate to come for a pint with you on a Saturday night. Like, you're selling, right? Everything you do. Life is a game of sales, as I always think. So.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree as well. It's always trying to convince that last mate to make that last attendance, even if they've just gone out the night before, or just even if they're not keen or just want to have a lazy day, and you manage to find the right words to convince them, and then it's crazy how those little moments, and then they end up having the best night of their life, or they end up meeting that special person, and then you always think to yourself, I was an amazing salesperson that day, and I made a difference.
Mate, you're selling to me. I want to go on a night out with you now.
Something like that.
Anyway, back to your role in your company. So that progression into the account management position. Tell me a bit more about what exactly you're doing in that role, what you're selling, how you're helping your customers.
Sure. So at Symbio Networks, it's all about connecting the dots, both literally and metaphorically. So we're a telecommunications and software company that specializes in providing VoIP, or voice over IP, and cloud communication services to businesses and service providers. So in simpler terms, what does that mean? I'm sure many are wondering. So we're basically like the phony superheroes of the communication world. So we swoop in to save the day by offering a range of innovative solutions that make communication smoother than a buttered phone line, for example. So our main offerings include VoIP services that let businesses make and receive calls over the internet. So if you're wondering that on a more personal uses, Joe, have you ever used Messenger to make or receive calls, for example?
Oh, rarely, I would say.
Rarely. So there are instances where maybe you're, talking to someone, and you press that phone or that video option, and then that's basically VoIP, using the internet to make the calls if you're not connecting through to Wi-Fi. So it's kind of the way that it's a lot cheaper than connecting through a standard phone line, and it's just very scalable and easy to manage. So it makes communication quite simple, and it makes it ready to go. And I was lucky to be in this particular position and in this industry, because it is an essential service. And during the lockdown that we faced a couple years ago, I was lucky enough to be working from home, and I was fortunate not to be losing any jobs, or I had to potentially move from a full-time to a part-time role. And some of the services that we offered actually bloomed during that time. And it's crazy to think how much the world has changed since then in my industry, because nowadays there's so many people working from home, myself included, and the nature of how we use the internet or how we use our mobile phone has changed and is changing so much, I believe.
And your role is predominantly looking after like customers' existing accounts you have.
Yeah, exactly. So mostly growing an existing portfolio of accounts.
Yeah.
So it's when I was in the partner relations advisor role, I was more looking at, let's say, 300 accounts. It was a massive amount of businesses, and they all scaled in revenue. And at the moment, I'm more managing around 50 partners. So that's going to be more prevalent in the next month, where I'll have a new set because of the end of the financial year. So at the moment, it's just growing those existing accounts organically through new services, for example, mobiles, NBN services, Microsoft Teams has been very big, and just even further products on the mobile side, which maybe I'll touch on a little bit later.
Yeah, and it seems like you're loving it, mate, and doing really well. What what sort of things like skills or attributes do you think you sort of bring to the table, or things you've done that have allowed you to have success in the company and also in that role?
Well, the skills that I believe you need to be a salesperson or in this particular role is it really does make sense to be a people person and a very attentive listener, and just an overall enthusiasm to help people and provide a solution to a problem. And you use the information you're given or the information that you can find to gain that sort of connection with someone, and use that sort of data to make the best tailored solution overall. So that's what I believe. I mean, I personally, when I first began in this industry and in this role, I probably wouldn't say I was a salesperson. I definitely grew into the role. Some people are natural salespeople who I've known through in other industries and have grown in different areas, and I know that there are other people that are more suited to more customer related roles. So it really depends on your personality and your style, and the best way is just to improve on your style, not to be someone that you're not.
So you saying you think salespeople can be made rather than they're born? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's like I always like to compare it to football. It's like
Yeah.
you always compare Messi and Ronaldo. Messi, you always feel like he's probably got the more talent, and then Ronaldo is probably more of a worked player. He trained and trained and trained. Not to say that Ronaldo didn't have that talent, but that's probably where you could maybe differentiate the two. And not to say that one's better than the other. It's more to do so that they have their own sets of skills, and how they use it and how they grow on those skills makes them a better player.
Who's off topic here, but Messi or Ronaldo for you in that great debate?
Oh well, it's always a tough one. I do appreciate watching them both, but the best way that I can explain it to any football fans listening is, I think Messi for me had more moments that took my breath away when I watched football.
Yeah.
I know Ronaldo had that bicycle kick that was just breathtaking for against Juventus, and that was unreal. But Messi, even in that last World Cup, just watching him, even against Australia. I'm sorry, Aussies out there. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But that performance was unbelievable, and it's just, yeah, I think he had to overcome more difficult challenges, being such a small player and living in the little streets of Argentina where he was born.
Yeah, I think that World Cup for me, just that, like when he got that sign that sealed the debate for me. But
Yeah, it made that argument tougher for Ronaldo fans, that's for sure.
I'm sure it will still keep rumbling on though. Mate, back to business. Going back to what you made the skills, the character traits you were talking about that you believe you bring to the table. The one that stood out for me, you mentioned, was enthusiasm. And I think I said at the start of this show, I always saw you as this really relentlessly positive, enthusiastic guy that just brought so much energy to every conversation, every encounter. I can just imagine you doing that with your customers. Where does that come from? Have you always been like that?
Yeah, great questions, and I appreciate the kind words. I asked. It's funny when I had a reflection on these questions. I did ask my friends just to get a bit of a perspective from their look to see what they thought, and my friends normally call me Mushroom because I'm a fun guy. That's what some of them said. And all my life, I've enjoyed traveling around the world, experiencing different cultures. So I guess an example is how can you complain about Wi-Fi speed when there was a doorman without legs opening the door to a 7-Eleven asking for a 20-cent tip just so he can eat? That was when I was just in my Mexico trip, and there's just so much goodness in the world that you can't complain about the little things. You gotta see it as positive, and you can't be overwhelmingly positive because you can't be delusional either. There's got to be some sort of balance, and I guess reflect on a time where you were positive and another time you were negative. Which one was more attractive and beneficial? And that's a motto that I stand by. And on the second part, where does that come from? It's definitely got to do with my surroundings and the people I'm closer to. And there was a video I watched recently of a successful businessman where he says, and I always repeat it because it just sticks with me. He says, "You are the sum of the 5 closest friends you hang around with," and that stands out for me. If you hang out with people that are negative, or if you hang out with people that are positive, you tend to move in that direction, whether you want to or not. It's just you kind of you tend to adapt, and when you adapt, it's an ever-growing area that you become used to, and that's just the way it is.
So you're almost attributing it to other people, the people you surround yourself with.
Absolutely, and they definitely provide that guidance and that help, and you choose to hang around those people. It's never you're forced to hang around those people. So if you hang out with, positive, inspiring people, you're going to be positive, inspiring people. It's just harder not to sort of adapt. And as a collective, I guess my family have also been a deep force that drive the kindness that I've got. My dad would always constantly remind me to treat everyone the same, whether they're the janitor or the CEO of a company, with the same amount of respect. And love is only real when shared. So at the end of the day, you need to embrace it and you need to accept it.
So is that something you consciously think about a lot? Right? Who am I surrounding myself with? Who are those 5 people that I'm consciously spending time with the right people that are going to match my energy? Is that something you think about a lot then, do you think?
Absolutely. And it comes down to what you want to achieve. What are your goals for the day? What are your goals for the week? And then I used to hang around people who had that sort of negativity and had that sort of, poor impact on my life. And I had to make a change. It wasn't, I don't like you anymore, or I don't want to hang around with you. It was more, I'm going in a different direction. I'm wanting to do this. I want to hone myself. I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. And that's so contagious. I think, if you use one word, or if you use an action to provide that sort of evidence, I think you'll go a long, long way.
I described you as relentlessly positive, but I think, would it be fair to say you're not always like that, right? I guess you would have your moments where you're not always, top of the world. As you say, you don't want to be over the top with it. Is that fair?
Oh, completely. And there's always going to be a bad day is always going to be coming, whether it's, loss of a relative, or it could be Arsenal losing, or it could be many, many things. But I think you always need to have that sort of time to reflect and, absorb that sort of feeling and use it in a positive way. And an example I can give is sometimes when I played a poor game in a sport or had just a really bad day at work, whereas things didn't go your way, I'd go to the gym or I'd go for a run just to keep my mind off it and just essentially to move in that direction, use that negative to make it into a positive and recycle it in that sort of manner. And you never know. There's always been instances where that negative makes it into such a positive that it takes over your day, and that's very inspiring from my perspective.
I always think like you need the negative experiences to make the positive things better. Like the people who are always, if they expect everything, to win every game or to be every day at work to be a great day, like because it's inevitable that the bad days or the bad results will happen. When they do happen, that it throws them off course because they're so set on everything must be perfect. So I think what you're getting at is like just embrace the fact that things won't go well, things won't always go to plan, but then just have the right sort of positive mindset to be able to brush it off and go again.
Absolutely. No, spot on. And if you really look into it further, on a personal level, I've learnt way more from hearing negative feedback than from hearing positive feedback. It's too often you would hear people say, "Oh, you did such a great job, well done," and that's not a negative thing. But you got to use constructive feedback, or you got to use examples just to push people. And I relate this maybe on my younger years where I had an incredible football coach and he didn't say many words at halftime, but the words that he used to motivate us and to make that change, sometimes he would tell you at your face, you were poor today, you were awful. But I believe that you can overcome this by working on this or by working on that. This is what I would do in your situation. And then you gotta develop it from using that sort of feedback and those comments to push yourself. You can't be, if someone tells you off in any sort of aspect, whether it's a business sense or a sporting sense or a dating sense, if someone tells you off, you can't be too down. You can't go home and be like depressed. I can't have that. I need to be coming home. I'm going to be using that, and I'll be disappointed in myself, and that's good. And then you use that the next day, or you use it, in the next couple hours to make something of it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this morning. Weirdly enough, like that thing about feedback and your ability to take feedback is so important. Like, and especially if it's critical feedback, negative feedback, because I think just by design and by like nature, we don't like to hear it. You don't know who likes to hear that they weren't that good today or whatever. But it's the best way to improve. And it's often ego, I think, that's kind of, there's nothing, that's why we don't like to hear it. We think we're kind of too, often the finished article or whatever. But then when you really think about it, like, it's the best way to improve. And what often separates people, the best people can take that feedback on board, really think about it, and use it moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you, Joe. It's really hard for me to disagree with you because it's what I feel as well. But you're right. There are many people who struggle to understand and to deal with that sort of negative feedback or improvement. It's almost arrogance. It's almost they're too good, or why should I change if I've done a great job? A great job's great, but become excellent, become extraordinary. Coach, train. Like you should never stop pushing yourself. And the arrogance of people for even in your industry where in recruitment, I mean, I'm sure you have to tell a lot of candidates that maybe they didn't get the role, or they weren't successful, and I'm sure maybe there's some scenarios where they didn't take it too well, or they kind of blamed everything but themselves, and that's so poor. there's only one person that you can blame, and it's you, and that's okay. And that, you got to use the amount of feedback I've used from recruiters on interviews that have definitely improved my chances has been invaluable. And you got to take it with the stride at the end of the day.
So we've touched upon the present there quite a lot. We talked about what you've been up to and your current mindset and your current state. What about the future? What does the future hold for Danny G? Like what can I be expecting from you, mate, in the next few years? So
What the future holds, I don't actually know what the future holds, and that's what makes it super exciting. This week I was working from home, listening to trance music, and then I get a message from you to join this podcast. So opportunities and change are all around us. So you got to maintain a balance. But what I always ponder and what I always think about is ensuring I put myself in the best position possible throughout the day. Bit like chess. I used to make 10 calls a day. Make it the first task I complete to set myself up for a positive outcome. Long term, I'd be keen to be a senior account manager.
yeah,
So I do enjoy the industry. I definitely want to stay in that software tech space and get maybe more responsibilities. Maybe a bit more pressure would be good, because diamonds form under pressure, obviously. But it's always I've always seen myself as a people person. I've always liked coaching. I've always liked training. I do like leadership roles where I could potentially be managing a team and using that sort of positivity or that sort of strong impact to push people to be the best that they can be. And who knows, that could be a toss up. And to the future, there's only the limit is only your imagination, and the journey is bound to be filled with laughter, learning, and perhaps a few puns. That's for sure.
so what are some of those mantras then that you're going to take forward? Like what are some of the things that I think you may have touched upon a few there, but things you live by that help you sort of get by your day and live your sort of best life that you maybe with that you can share to the audience.
Well, it costs nothing to be kind. There's so many little things that you can make a small difference. The other day, maybe a year or so ago, I was just even on Instagram, and I was doing small vlogs saying, do something good today, or do something that will make someone's day. And I started, probably wasn't the best managing of it, but I started saying, a polite thing to someone who I would walk by on my way to work, and sometimes they would smile, sometimes they would say something nice back. And I've even had, there's been an instance or two where I've seen them multiple times and have just become friends. And it's funny because you meet so many different types of people from all walks of life, and you really just got to make the best of your chances, because there's so much to learn, there's so much to see. So that's you put yourself in that situation, and that's all I can ask, to be kind. There's too much hatred out there, and if you can make one positive impact, it's like a ripple, and it definitely spreads out.
Yeah, small things, but they can go a long way sometimes, for sure.
Spot on. Yeah. So that would be my mantra. There you go.
Love it, mate. You touched upon your family actually a little bit, a few times. I know they're important to you, and I know you've got also some, Peruvian heritage, right, in your family. How do you feel that sort of maybe affected your, who you are today or your upbringing? Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know, my parents are both from Peru, South America. They were born and raised there, and then due to some terrorism and a few other factors, they decided to come to Australia. And although my mum says it was terrorism, I low-key always think that it was her ambition to come to see the Australian beaches and to just get an amazing tan, but we won't go into that. But it was living in difficult circumstances. And there was a story my mum told me that there were bomb threats where she was working in the tourism industry, and there were situations where there were packages being dropped in a building, and Australia's such a beautiful country, and doesn't it's a bit more secure and has more out there to explore. So I believe a lot of what I get and what I learn from is that you've got so much opportunity out there to make the most of your day. So a lot of my positivity and a lot of my enthusiasm I get from them, that they work their asses off. They push themselves to raise a family of five, and to put up with all of us and our cheeky selves, and they raised us in a great area as well. So I was very happy to be a part of that journey, and the end is not there just yet, but I'm sure that there's more amazing surprises to occur further down the track.
Yeah, love it, mate. Love it. And mate, while we're catching up, we got to talk. We got to talk football.
Of
We
course.
talked a little bit before we were recording. About I said commiserations on Arsenal, sort of maybe bottling the title a bit. What are your what are your thoughts on that? As I know a big Gunners fan.
Oh, Arsenal, man. If anyone's an Arsenal fan listening to this, still is a tough 20 odd years not winning the league title. Although we didn't win, and yeah, you could argue that it was bottled, and we did lose it. And but at the end of the day, this year I was able to dream. I was able to imagine what could be. My boss actually happens to be a Tottenham supporter, and I even told him, look, if Arsenal win the league this year, I'm going to take a few days off to celebrate with my friends. And he's like, yeah, no worries, they won't win, so I've got nothing to worry about. And then I still don't hear the end of it at the moment. And I've always loved watching Arsenal kid, the Thierry Henry days of just and the football brand that he's played, possession, a bit of tiki taka, you would say, and some of the players brought in from such a young age to be developed and brought. There's not that much, you compare it to the team that we lost to this year, Man City, who won the Champions League on Sunday, yesterday. And they've got an amazing squad, amazing players. Obviously, they spent a lot of money, and a lot of people say they spent billions, or a lot of clubs spent money. It's just how you use it and how you manage it. I think I read an article the other day even saying that Man United have actually had a larger net spend than Manchester City, and they don't have too much to show for it. So a little dig there, but but I mean, even at the end of the day, finishing second doesn't really mean much. But I was proud of having the youngest team in the Premier League. If you told me at the start of the year that we were going to finish second, I would have been over the moon. So it's just how you view it. It's your perspective on the season. And as an Arsenal fan, you have to be positive. Otherwise, it's just gonna kill you even more.
Yeah. I agree a little bit. I don't actually think Arsenal bottled it too much. I think they were just up against just a juggernaut of a team in Guardiola's City. Like, they were just relentless chasing them down. But on a personal note, I don't know if I got this right, but I saw on your Instagram you might have made a little transfer. You left your beloved French's Forest. Is it you signed for West Pymble? Is it?
Yeah. So there's been some personal changes in the last year. So I moved out of home, bought a nice little place in Gordon. So I was playing football for Forest Killarney for 15, no more, like 20, 18 years, I think, 18, 19 years. And that came to an end, and I've been playing for the West Pymble side, and they've been an amazing bunch of guys, very welcoming, very cheeky, and just a great culture. No toxicity. Is that the word? Toxicity? Is that the word I'm looking for? But it wasn't a toxic culture where I've been in those sort of situations where it's more swearing. It doesn't have that gentleman aspect to it. And of course I'm a gentleman, or a gentle Dan, of course. So I've loved playing every minute of it.
Yeah.
So it's been a good ride so far. What about yourself? Have you been playing a bit of football in Melbourne?
Yeah, but I've joined. I play for the North Melbourne Trojans.
Oh, very
Um,
nice.
currently bottom of the league, so it's not, it's not going brilliant. Cutler at centre half, shipping goals left, right, centre.
Oh goodness. Well, there are
Yeah,
only ways up, mate.
yeah. Moving swiftly on from that.
Fair enough.
You you mentioned briefly the little mini vlogs you've been posting. I think you might be referring to the Danny G Diaries. Is that right?
The
What's happened
famous
to them? I haven't seen them in a while. When are they coming
ah,
back?
the Danny G Diaries. They're just small clips of me providing or spreading some sort of positivity. Even today, it's a public holiday, and I did a little post saying, people are sleeping or people are drinking, but I'm here working. I mean, what are you making of it? And I always love to preach that sort of kindness, positivity, and even I don't have many followers, but even if I manage to change or persuade one or two people to make something of their day, I think that's an achievement in itself. So that's what that sort of series was all about, making a potential change. And I've had good feedback from those little clips there. Sometimes I'd have people saying, you pushed me to go to the gym today, or I've had people say, thank you so much. I did this and that today. I think even one of them was probably on like a small relationship advice. Not saying that I'm a relationship expert at all, because I'm very single. But but I would say
Just slip that
make
in there.
yeah, make make that sort of move. Don't be. Life is so short, and this you never know what can happen. You had COVID 2 years ago, where we were at home for a couple years, just not doing too much. You had a lot of people who struggled and lost jobs. You never know what's around the corner, so you really just have to live in the moment.
Mate, have you thought about posting the Danny G Diaries to TikTok?
I haven't actually. I haven't really looked into that
I think
platform
I
as
think
much.
that's the platform for you, to be honest. I,
Yeah, look, I'll look into it. I reckon with the TikTok side, I did recently read that they might be discontinuing it from Australia. I don't know if
oh,
that's
right,
going
yeah.
to be moving forward, but if it does, maybe I might move into Reels or what's the other one on Facebook? I think there's one on Facebook, but I don't use it. But I have seen some of yours, mate, and they're very clever. So
Yeah.
I'll have to
I've
maybe get some inspiration from them.
I've been having a bit of fun with TikTok the last year or so. So yeah, I see you on there as well, mate. Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do watch some videos there and there. It's just it's crazy though, TikTok. I do think it's changed a lot of my attention span. So much. It's I don't know what it is. It's if something doesn't capture me in the first 30 seconds. And I think that's a lot like sales. If you're selling to a potential prospect and you don't capture their interest or their attention,
Yeah,
they move on. So I
yeah.
think TikTok and the way that technology is moving ahead is quite scary, to be honest. And who knows? You've got AI, you've got so much happening, and you just got to keep up, or be potentially left behind.
Yeah, great point actually. Is it for your advice, anyone who wants to kind of get on board, would you say, adapt these new technologies, especially if you're in sales?
Oh, completely. Even AI, using. I know a friend of mine who's a software engineer, and he's using ChatGPT for some codes and to simplify a lot of things. But I also asked him, mate, are you worried that AI could potentially take your role? And he said, yeah, I'm very concerned. It's a real possibility, and we always got to be careful of that, because I think with sales, it's hard for AI, I believe, to take that sales and that emotional aspect of it. So I always think there's going to be some roles in there. But if you get left behind of using TikTok or using videos, or
Yeah,
or different mediums to capture someone, you're really gonna slip. And before it was, I'll give you an amazing example, I believe. So before it was a lot of door knocking. How often do you see door knocking in sales now? It's gone. And uh, who uses newspaper ads these days for jobs? I mean, not many people use Seek these days. I mean, it's all mostly LinkedIn. Well, that's what I'm seeing. So that there's so much that you really need to be aware of, and use that sort of those sort of mediums to excel.
Adapt or die, baby.
Absolutely. Otherwise, who knows what will happen?
Yeah, for sure. Mate, I've got one final question for you. This hopefully wraps things up quite nicely, and it's a question I tend to finish up, on episodes on this show. And you can take this whichever way, where you like, personally, professionally, but it's around the idea of success. So I want to know and understand a little bit more what success means to Danny G.
Success means to Danny G. That is a great question. And for me, it comes down to three key things. So, health, your family and your friendships, and money. I think you need to maintain a good steady level of all three of them. It's just finding that sort of balance and that sort of arrangement between all three that is the toughest part, I think, of,
Yep.
of life, or of success. If you have too much money, and you have minimal relationship with your family and your friends, you've got all that gold, but who are you going to be there to share it with? And I think the best moments of your life, or of my life so far, have been with other people. I do enjoy being by myself, and would consider myself an ambivert, in the middle. However, those moments that take your breath away tend to be with family and friends. And obviously you've got your health. You can't, I love, going for a drink with a friend or catching up for drinks, but if you're constantly drinking, or if you're, constantly doing other things, you're really putting your health, and you're really minimizing or reducing your potential, life expectancy. So you gotta be conscious of that. And I've always been I've been a health advocate. Going to the gym, eating clean, eating well, having that sort of social sports side of things, whether it's football, whether it's playing some tennis, or just staying active in general. It's so important. It all comes together, and it's so transferable. They're all transferable skills that you use in everyday life. If you're running away from police, you need to have a good cardio. So you need to work on your cardio if that ever happens. Otherwise, they'll catch you. So it's always hit and run, if you must say.
So it's those three pillars, and it's about maintaining, making sure that you're doing your best, I guess, with all three of those. And if one slipping, say, right, maybe I can lose a bit more of one pillar and try and transfer to that one, or just trying to have the balance between those three. Is that right?
Yeah, completely. You got to maintain that balance, and ensure that overall you can't. I don't think you should be using those pillars just for your own happiness. Sometimes you gotta do it for what's best for your family, or what's best in
Yeah.
the current situation. Sometimes you do have to put yourself second, and that's okay. And we're all here to make the most of what you can do, and what you can achieve.
Danny G, thank you very much for coming on the show. What an episode! What a chat! What a guy! Really appreciate you coming on and sharing, your wisdom, your knowledge, your attitude. I absolutely love it. I appreciate you as a friend, and I appreciate the catch up, mate. Danny G.
You guys are too kind. Thank you so much. Joe, we'll have to catch up when you're next in Sydney, or when I'm in Melbourne. And yeah, it's been a good little chat. I've loved it. I can't wait to hear it, and to share it around.
Love it, mate.